Picture this, December 11th, 1990, a federal courtroom in Manhattan. John Gotti, one of the most violent mob bosses in American history, walks out a free man for the third time. The jury has just acquitted him of charges that should have buried him forever. The crowd erupts. Cameras flash. He smiles at reporters like a movie star. They call him the Teflon Don. Nothing sticks. But here's what nobody knew that day, what nobody would discover for years. One of those jurors sitting in that box, they were paid off, bought. The fix was in before the trial even started. And that's just the beginning of how John Gotti didn't just beat the system. He owned it. Keep watching, because what I'm about to show you about how he fooled an entire nation is going to change everything you thought you knew about power, manipulation, and the American justice system. Let's go back to where it all began. New York City, 1985. The streets of Manhattan are electric with money, ambition, and danger. The five families run everything: the unions, the docks, construction, waste management. But there's a problem. The old bosses, the ones who built the empire in silence, they're fading. Paul Castellano, the head of the Gambino family, he's losing touch. He lives in a mansion on Staten Island, drives a Mercedes, wears tailored suits. He's more businessman than gangster now. And that makes him weak. John Gotti sees this weakness, and he's hungry. He's a soldier, a made man from the streets of Queens. And he's got something Castellano doesn't. He understands spectacle. He knows that in America, image is everything. December 16th, 1985, Sparks Steakhouse. Rush hour in Midtown Manhattan. Castellano steps out of his car in his cashmere coat. He never makes it inside, 6 bullets, right there on the East 46th Street. The hit is surgical, professional, terrifying. And within hours, John Gotti is sitting at the head of the most powerful crime family in America. But here's where it gets interesting, because Gotti doesn't hide. He doesn't disappear into the shadows like every mob boss before him, no. He does the opposite. He walks into the Ravenite Social Club in Little Italy like he's holding court. He wears $1,000 suits. He waves to photographers. He shakes hands with neighbors. He turns himself into a celebrity, and America falls in love with him. You have to understand what's happening here. This isn't just arrogance. This is strategy. Gotti knows something that law enforcement is only beginning to realize. In the age of television, in the media circus of the 1980s, you can control the narrative. You can make yourself untouchable, not by hiding, but by being seen so much that people start rooting for you. He's the anti-hero. The Robin Hood of Queens, the guy who throws 4th of July parties for the neighborhood, who tips big, who looks the cameras dead in the eye and smiles. Beneath that smile, a machine of violence, extortion, and murder. But the public doesn't see that. They see the suit, they see the swagger, they see the Teflon. Now let's talk about how his operation actually worked, because this is where it gets fascinating. Gotti runs the Gambino family like a military operation. But with one critical innovation, he understands that modern law enforcement is listening. Always. The FBI has wiretaps everywhere. They've got bugs in restaurants, in clubs, in cars. So Gotti adapts. He never discusses business on the phone. Never. When he needs to give an order, he does it face-to-face, in the middle of the street, walking between buildings where surveillance can't capture the audio clearly. Or he uses intermediaries, trusted soldiers who deliver messages verbally, nothing written, nothing recorded. It's a human network of whispers and nods. When someone needs to be dealt with, the word goes down through layers. Gotti to his underboss, underboss to a captain, captain to a soldier. By the time the order reaches the shooter, there's no direct line back to the top. It's brilliant, it's careful. It's exactly why they can't touch him. And then there's omerta, the code of silence. This isn't just some honor system. This is enforcement through pure terror. You talk, you die. Your family might die. Everyone knows this. When the FBI tries to flip witnesses, when they offer protection, immunity, a new life, most refuse. Because they know that Gotti's reach extends beyond prison walls, beyond state lines. There are stories, and these are real, of men who cooperated and disappeared, of families who woke up to find threats carved into their front doors, of bodies that turned up in car trunks after someone was seen talking to federal agents. The message is clear. Silence is survival. And for years, it works. The witnesses stay quiet. The juries hear nothing. The cases collapse. But Gotti's real genius is in the courtroom itself. He doesn't just defend himself, he performs. He shows up looking like $1 million. Custom suits from Italy, perfect hair. He makes eye contact with every juror. He smiles, he nods, he makes them like him. His lawyers are the best money can buy, and they know how to work a jury. They attack the credibility of witnesses. They poke holes in FBI surveillance. They make the government look sloppy, overzealous, desperate, and it works. 1986, acquitted. 1987, acquitted. 1990, acquitted again. 3 trials, 3 victories, the media eats it up. Headlines scream, Teflon Don strikes again. Magazine covers, TV interviews. He's not a criminal anymore in the public eye. He's a folk hero. The guy who beat the system. The underdog who keeps winning. New York during this time is a powder keg. The city is glamorous and grimy at the same time. Wall Street is booming. Cocaine is flooding in. The murder rate is skyrocketing. And somehow, in the middle of all this chaos, Gotti represents order to some people. He's the old-school tough guy in a world that feels out of control. People in his neighborhood genuinely love him. He pays for funerals. He settles disputes. He's visible, present, real. What they don't see is what happens behind closed doors at the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club. The loan sharking that ruins families. The protection rackets that bleed small businesses dry. The bodies in the landfills. The violence that keeps the whole empire running. If you're watching this and you love true crime stories like this, do me a favor. Share this video with someone who's obsessed with real-life mysteries and the dark side of American history. This is the kind of story most people never hear the full truth about, and I'm going to keep digging deeper into cases like this. Now, back to how this all falls apart. Because here's the thing about building an empire on fear and image. Eventually, someone breaks. In Gotti's case, it's his own underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano. This is a man who's killed 19 people. 19. He's Gotti's right hand, his most trusted soldier. And in 1991, facing life in prison, he does the unthinkable. He flips. He agrees to testify. And when Sammy talks, he doesn't hold back. He describes murders in detail. He explains the structure, the operations, the codes. He connects Gotti directly to killings, to racketeering, to everything. But even with Sammy's testimony, there's something else at play. Remember that detail I mentioned at the beginning? We're getting there. The 1992 trial is different. The FBI has learned from their mistakes. They've got bugs inside the Ravenite. They've got Gotti on tape, actual recordings of him discussing business, ordering hits, admitting to crimes. Combined with Gravano's testimony, the case is airtight. There's no performance, no charm, no courtroom magic that can save him this time. The jury deliberates for 13 hours, guilty on all counts. Racketeering, murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. The sentence, life without parole. The Teflon Don is done. He's sent to federal prison in Marion, Illinois, where he'll die of cancer in 2002, alone and isolated. But here's what the public didn't know then, what only came out years later through FBI documents and investigative reporting. That 1990 acquittal, the one that seemed like magic, it wasn't luck. It wasn't brilliant lawyering. It was corruption. One of the jurors, a man named George Papa, had been approached, not by Gotti himself. He's too smart for that. But through intermediaries, through layers of the same kind of insulation Gotti used for everything else. Pape was offered money, a lot of money, and he took it. He sat in that jury box, and he voted not guilty, and he convinced enough of the other jurors to doubt the evidence that Gotti walked free. This wasn't discovered until after Gotti's final conviction, when investigators started piecing together how he'd beaten case after case. The Teflon Don image wasn't about being untouchable. It was about being willing to corrupt every single part of the system. Bribes, threats, manipulation. That's the real story. Think about that for a second. For years, America watched this man beat the justice system, and we thought it was because he was smart, because he was careful, because the government couldn't prove their case. But the truth is darker. He was buying his freedom. He was tampering with juries. He was making a mockery of the entire legal process, and nobody knew it was happening. That's not Teflon. That's just raw, calculated corruption, dressed up in an expensive suit and sold to us as charm. John Gotti didn't fool America because he was clever. He fooled America because he understood that people want to believe in myths. They want to believe that someone can beat the system, that there's a code of honor among criminals, that swagger and confidence can overcome the law. And he gave them that story, that performance, that illusion. all while behind the scenes, he was destroying lives, corrupting institutions, and running one of the most violent criminal enterprises in American history. So the next time you hear someone romanticize the mob, remember, there's nothing romantic about jury tampering. There's nothing honorable about ordering murders and then smiling for cameras. The Teflon Don was a myth. The real John Gotti was a criminal who exploited every weakness in the American justice system, until finally, inevitably, it caught up with him. If you want more deep dives into the dark, hidden truths behind the most infamous criminals in history, subscribe to this channel. I'm bringing you stories that go beyond the headlines, beyond the myths, straight into the disturbing reality of how power actually works in America. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next investigation. Trust me, the truth is always darker than you think.